Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, continuing on with my Supercoach team discussion series. The preseason is completed, and we've got an absolute game changer with you at the moment. We've had the Cyclone Alfred on approach to Brisbane. They've had to kick the opening round out of Queensland, and it is on its way to another round that we don't know yet, presumably round 3 for Brisbane Geelong. I've shared a few ideas about what the Gold Coast and Essendon game could look like on X, but we will wait and see what the AFL's official decision around that is. But there is a lot to talk about in today's episode. Before we jump into it, though, as always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular YouTube, Spotify. Get in contact with us via X, Supercoach Insider 100 and Swiz 26. I'll have some codes today as well for the Supercoach Insider, Supercoach Open League, as well as our tipping league as well, which I will share with you soon. Before I jump into that, a big shout out to everybody in Queensland. Hope you are doing well. My co-hosts, Benny and Chris, hopefully they'll be on leading into round 1. Obviously, they're dealing with a lot of other things at the moment. Chris was sharing with us the other day that, he was trying to get supplies. He's sandbagging, doing everything he can to protect himself from the cyclone that is approaching Queensland, and then has completely changed opening around for this season, and there's a lot to talk about that. Firstly, pre-season, just in the what we've seen in regards to injuries, there's been big changes and absolute game changers. The two probably most owned midfielders in Bont and Butters gone for quite a significant amount of time to start the season. So a lot of people have been changing their teams for that. The one positive is it kind of makes Supercoach more interesting because there's a lot more combinations I'm seeing with people sending me their teams, and that's no doubt with me, a couple of strategies we've got to think about. And then there's some other key players that have gone down, like Goulden, for example, and Mills at Sydney. That now opens the doors for players like Sheldrick. So a lot of opportunity is going to be had because of these long-term injuries that clubs are now facing. So it does make Supercoach exciting. From that point of view, we wish the players all the best. And then in regards to the Queensland situation, so now where we were probably looking at fading some of these Lions and Cats players in particular, if the game is moved to round 3 as expected, all of a sudden they don't have an early bye, makes picking them a lot easier. It also probably opens up the door for those Collingwood and Sydney players in round who are missing in round 3, because now we're only got the one bye, so easy to kind of pick them. Also easy to fade if you still want to go there, because you do have the Brisbane and Geelong option. Gold Coast Essendon will be interesting going forward, depending on where that lies. If it is a double game situation where one thought, the AFL is exploring the idea of Gold Coast and Essendon, who are playing in round 17. The Bombers have the bye in 16, so making that game later in round 17, having the Suns and the Bombers play earlier that round. So it could be hypothetically a late round 16 game or an early round 17 game. Could mean that the Gold Coast Suns end up with a double. It might mean Essendon ends up with a double. Maybe Supercoach will average out the scores. So we've got to wait and see where that falls in. My idea was for Essendon and Gold Coast to forego their mid-season bye instead of playing the double header. Some Essendon supporters haven't been happy with that idea. My idea was Essendon and Geelong move to round 16, and then the Gold Coast and the Bombers would then have the bye round 14 together, which they could then play their game to make up for the fact they're not having a bye. For example, St Kilda, their bye week, they're only getting a 10-day break. So you could manufacture a situation where, say, in round 17, round 18, the Bombers and the Suns both play maybe either a Wednesday or a Thursday night, and then their next game's not till, say, a Sunday, so they're still getting a 9-day break. You could hypothetically put it on a Monday, for example, get a 10-day break and then have a 6-day break to the Sunday the following week. So there are ways of doing it. I personally don't like the suggestion of the bye weekend leading into finals and just having a separate game there. I think it's too much an advantage for Essendon and Gold Coast if they're going for the finals. Yes, it does give us footy on that blank weekend, but then it's the same disadvantage if they are in contention, because then they're not getting the week off compared to other teams, and what happens if you get concussions and everything like that. So I personally don't like that. It makes it difficult in regards to round 2 and the round 4, because both Gold Coast and Essendon are playing Adelaide, so they still have to play the Crows at some point. So now you're just creating a new situation which is involving the Crows. So I don't like that. But from a Supercoach perspective, Merritt and Anderson in particular do become interesting picks as the season goes on now. So we've got to kind of wait and see where that slides in. All right, we'll start off with the tipping side of things first. And when I'll share that code for you guys. So we've got so we've set up an open league. There's jokers involved with this, so they can add now with tipping a couple of jokers throughout the season. I've just left it open for you guys to choose. We've had a few people already join in the community. So it is the league code for tipping is 624436. There will be a link for that in the show notes, guys. So again, that code is 624436 if you want to join. In regards to leagues this year, we do have a Supercoach Insider Open League. Once again, we'll come up with some prize for that. So the code there is 661862. 661862. That'll also be in the show notes in case you've missed that, guys. So join the Open League and all the best for that. Now we'll look at my team now. As always, we'll look through all the positions: defender, midfield, rucks, forwards, and flex. We'll go through some of these highest owned percentage players. Some of these guys need to be definitely locked in your side. Some of these players can be avoided due to injury or probably lack of opportunities, and we'll talk about alternatives for them. Also some alternatives that I might be looking at for positions. Most of the guys are pretty locked in at the moment, but I'm still waiting, obviously, round 0 to see how some of these Sydney, Hawthorn, and GWS and Collingwood players go. Depending on what they score, we'll probably alter a couple of the positions because their break evens going forward. Their score doesn't obviously count to our team, but it does count to what sort of price rise or potential drop that they may have going forward. The first one is no-brainer. It's Harry Sheezel. If anyone missed the game against West Coast, just did Harry Sheezel stuff. 36 possessions, had 170 Supercoach. Absolutely ridiculous. The argument is, where does he fit in the sort of the best 50 players in the game? If you're kind of looking forward at projections, you could definitely make an argument that he's probably going to be number 2 to Dacos for a long time. So just such a quality player, and the fact that this is probably going to be the last year we're going to have him as a defender, as I've said previously, just lock him in, guys, because that's just an absolute no-brainer for us. The second guy who's come in because of this whole buy situation, and that is the Brisbane Lions defender, Dane Zorko. I was having a little look at him anyway, just because of their opening fixture. The Swans isn't obviously a tough game, but if we have a little bit of a look of a Dane Zorko situation here, and it's an unreal start for the Lions, for a team that is coming off the premiership, and we know the quality of Dane Zorko anyway. We know Kitty Coleman's not there as it is for the first part of the season. Might be even a bit more extended now, but yeah, the Swans, West Coast, which should be a good game. Then the Geelong game will come in now. Should come in for round 3. The Tigers, Bulldogs, Collingwood, Saints, Gold Coast, North Melbourne, and Melbourne. It's an actually ridiculous start for a team that just won the flag. The Lions, Zorko was leading that scoring again in the practice match against the Crows, had the 28 touches and 123 Supercoach. So just an absolute beauty, and he's just going to continue to do what he did last season. Some of his scores, as we know, was just off the charts, finds the ball, and scored quite well against the Swannies last year. He's actually had a couple of down years against West Coast, but look at that 161 he scored against Richmond. So that you could see more of the same. We know a lot of teams are going to go really well against the Tigers. So somebody that I really like in there. Potentially I could drop him down to a Max Holmes now that he's available as well. But I feel like Zorko's got a lot better, higher ceiling, where maybe Max Holmes is kind of in that Wanganeen Malira section, where he's going to probably be maybe that 105 guy. My third guy is Jordan Clark. He's been in my team for quite a while now. My love affair with the Fremantle Dockers this year is pretty highly known. Only in the 8% of teams, which I like. Is if you kind of take a pod, I like to take it under 10%, but I guess most people look at it as under 5. But he's in close to that pod range. He, more than Luke Ryan, is going to be that attacking guy. I'm waiting for the situation where he gets those sort of Jaden Short runs around the back and bombs goals from 55. I think he's got that ability in his game as well. 28 touches, 7 marks, and just looked beautiful. 117 Supercoach against the D's the other night. So I think there is potential some upside, especially if the Dockers are winning and he's in more attacking chains. So it would not surprise me if he's up in that top 3 echelon this season at all. So I'm pretty high on Clark. Even at the worst, I feel like Ryan comes down and regresses and Clark goes up, and they might be the same. But so I'll take the guy who's the cheaper version of Ryan, just because we saw how Freo did change their game style later in the year, and that's why Ryan kind of came back as that sort of 90s to 100 guy, because there's a less chipping and a little bit more attacking off the halfback flank, and I expect that to continue going forward. So I really like him as a selection. The next one, and this guy will be growing every day now that potentially you don't have as many guys in that defence who are affected because of the bye, and that's Matty Roberts from the Sydney Swans. We kind of wanted to see what happened in regards to how Cox was going to coach them, but we knew that Cox really rates this kid, and that first practice match against GWS at Tramway Oval. He's kind of playing a little bit more Houston role. We were sort of 40 meters off the ball and then pushing up closer to the contest. But we got to see Matty Roberts more, what we're expecting out of him. Doesn't take as many of the kickouts. That is more a Blakey thing. And young, well, not really young, mature age Bice was taking kickouts as well, but he was all receiving the kick-ins, Roberts. So kick into him, takes a mark, and then he gets the disposal, or it's to Roberts and he's the one distributing out of the half-back line. 27 touches, 119 points the other day. Now, there is a little bit of word of warning from these half-backs because they usually do tend to score better in these practice matches and match sims, but nonetheless, we know Roberts has got the ceiling. We saw some unreal games from him from the second half of the year. And just as a reminder, we'll go through this because he is undervalued for the reason for his start of the season. You'll see there until sort of after his bye, we had a couple of scores in the 90s, but 76, 69, 80. And then there was that sort of period there as well until he kind of settled into that role. And then after the injury affected 5, like that run home, 95, 114, 161, 85, 92, 112, 118. Like if we're getting those sort of scores from a 434 player, we're just absolutely on the money there. So I really like that, even with the early bye. I think he's going to continue to see a lot of ball. They've moved Jake Lloyd further up the ground to accommodate him, especially now with Goulden out as well. So I think Matt Roberts is very entrenched as that main halfback and distributor from there. The next guy I'm looking at is also another round 3 guy. So he could potentially come out, and maybe I go to a Jaden Short, who I haven't been a bigger fan on, but they're kind of the similar price. I will have some money left over to make these moves if I want to, but Harry Perryman was very impressive. It was only the Tigers he was playing in, but as that third midfielder and playing as a defensive midfielder, it reminds me a lot of like Josh Dunkley coming into the Lions, somebody who's going to run 2 ways. His base is going to be dependent on his tackle numbers. Not a huge ball winner, but it had the 20 and kicked a goal. But the big thing is the 10 tackles the other day. So if he's sort of getting somewhere between 6 and 10 tackles, even more each game, he could be banking 40 points before we even worry about him getting a touch. So Dacos is going to obviously be the attacking midfielder. They've also got probably a De Goey through there when he's fit. So there's got to be somebody who's going to come in there and run the other direction and put the pressure on, and that will be Perryman. But he's still able to find the ball. But yeah, that positional move coming from GWS and now playing in as the defensive midfielder, I think that's quite good. It's not a tagger, that's a defensive midfielder who can still go and find the ball. So there's a lot to like about him. The only problem is about these round 3 buys, depending on how many you carry. So you've got to have a plan to make sure you'd probably in a perfect world want sort of 22, 23 in round 3, just so you've got enough players to sort of take out their lower scores to get your best 18. But I definitely think that there's potential there to carry both of them. Again, Jaden Short is an option. He did look good the other night, but I do get worried about the fact that the way he kind of faded out of the game in the second half, the options for him to kick to compared to some of these other teams, we don't have that big bulky centre half forward, especially if Lynch is not fit. If Lynch is there and playing that role, it does slightly make it easier. But yeah, I kind of get worried about who's he going to kick to down the line, unless he's bombing it over 50, and then it just that part of it doesn't matter so much. But once the pressure starts to come for that Richmond defence, it is going to get harder. And he's never been a guy who's averaged over 100. So I do have my worries still there about Jaden Short, and I've been pretty clear about that all pre-season. In saying that, he could potentially still sway me, but we will have a look at that. James Leake has come flying back into my team. That first match sim didn't really help, but the second one, the proper preseason game, where he had the 19 CBAs. We know Tom Green is out. This guy can fill every role. Like, he would probably be a perfect sub candidate, but now that they've got some injuries down there, we know they've got the suspension. It just makes sense for James Leake to come in and be a starter, especially around the guts. And then even when more players come back, yeah, he might have the regression, come back off maybe the bench and just fill different roles coming off there. So he's very versatile. Do like his game. Think he's got a big future there at the Giants. And now with as I've said, these injuries, it just makes sense. It was only the 61-point game, 18 touches from all those CBAs. So there is a slight concern there, but at his price and the lack of defensive rookies, I just think that's kind of a no-brainer for us. The next one is no surprise. Great foot skills here by Zach Reed the other day, 55% own. So, yeah, no, I really like what he brought to the table. We know he's going to play for Essendon. He's that high draft pick that they're backing him. The combination between him and Mackay, and then allows Ridley to zone off and look at him. I personally wouldn't look at Ridley. I've had that discussion with a couple of people already just because of the injury history. But if you're looking for that Essendon player who can become a loophole for you, potentially in round 4 if they still keep their bye. That's Zach Reed. Had the 18 touches, the 6 marks, and the 73 points the other day. I have tossed and turned a bit about Bo Allen. I'm going to keep him in there for now. There's a couple other options I do like the idea of going down to. He couldn't have scored any worse. I think there's still going to be upside. I don't see him every week scoring a -12, but it is a worry for the fact that he didn't find the ball, and when he did butcher it. They gave away free kicks. It's a concern, but at least him being 136, I've got options to go down to. So I'm looking at Bice, and depending on how he plays, I was pretty impressed with Luke Traynor when he came on as well. So they are the options. I'll go through a couple of these higher percentage guys and just talk about who could be and who couldn't be. So Toby Travalia, cross him off. I think he's going to be a massive sub candidate. Didn't look good. He was actually practicing, like coming on later in the game. So I think that's where his role is early on. And for 172K, there are better options there. Sada Harley, if I can spit that out, 32% guys, just rub him off on that. He didn't even get a look in any of the preseason matches, so not worth the time at the moment. Luke Traynor is an interesting one from Richmond. His second half, when he did get the opportunity, looked really good. We know we're going to play the kids at some point, so just want to be mindful of there. He scored the 39, but had the 12 touches from limited game time. So it was quite impressive from him. Wouldn't be surprised if he started in round 1. So just one to monitor, and I think that could be a good one to go down from Bo Allen if you're looking for that. I still think the better idea here is the 5 deep in defense, or there's one mid-pricer we'll talk about, so it could be the 4, possibly a real technical mid-pricer that I haven't mentioned so far. So Luke Traynor, there's Riley Bice, 16% of teams. So he's one to definitely watch how he goes up against Hawthorn if he is picked. I really also like the other Sydney Swan in Patton. I've talked about him all preseason. I'm more looking at him in the forward line for now. But if it comes down to its own Patton or Bice and they go with one, potentially maybe I'll put that in the back line. But I'm trying to avoid having another round 3 bye in that back line at the moment. If I'm going to pick Patton, it's going to be the other direction. Ricky Mentha, I guess people are using him as a loophole, so I'll leave him alone. The one here is Sam De Koning, so he does become a little bit more in vogue. The hard thing is, he probably didn't set the world on fire for people the other day, just the 59 Supercoach from the 16 hit-outs. And Geelong have said there will be games there, in particular the Melbourne game, where they'll be looking at other plans. So we'll just go through their fixture because it is an important one, because I know that I'm getting quite a few messages about Sam De Koning. And the worry comes, like we saw what he can do last year when he was given this sort of opportunity in the ruck. There were some good scores there. The 135 and the 125 really stand out. The problem is, like we probably need at least sort of 90s and consistently there that from him to pick him at the 361 price. If he had a better ruck draw, it probably does make it easier, because then they don't need to swap players around like they're going to have to do. So we know Freo, then that's not a bad one because Darcy's not going to be there, so he'll be up against Reedy. St Kilda will probably Marshall, but the big one there now, round 4, even with the round 3 game coming in with Big O, but round 4 gone, they have said they're not going to throw De Conning like a wildebeest to a lion, because Max Gorn will absolutely destroy him. So there will be alternatives. So he'll probably head back to the back line for that game. So that is a worry. So personally, I think at the moment it's an avoid and just kind of wait and see what happens. If he starts going off the chart, then we can look at him. A few guys were pretty impressed with Dan Houston. I think he's is a potential guy for us as the season goes on. But I personally won't start with him. I'll just kind of, it's a wait and see. He could be one that I could find the money to go from Perryman to Houston, but I've kind of like Perryman's role in that midfield. Lockie Whitfield, again, it's just that early buy that's putting me off. Same with Sam Flanders, should be back. But so I'd be probably avoiding him. There's talk that, they've got their expected to be available 1 or 2 now. So just maybe a wait and see. I'd rather just hope he drops some cash. And as I said earlier, Nasiah Wanganeen, Malira, same as Max Holmes. I think they're kind of capped a little bit on their role. So that's how I'm feeling about the defense at the moment. All right, we'll move on to the midfielders. So I've had a massive change here for myself. There's one player in particular that I'm looking at with the Bont and Butters, and it's good to see their ownership has massively dropped down from 9% and 3%. Still, that needs to get down to 0%, guys. But the one that a lot of people are pivoting to is Lockie Neal. Again, that fixture early on. So it's couldn't be any better for the Lions, especially in regards to a midfield situation. So he becomes one where I think it's just it's nearly kind of value in that role, because we know what Lockie Neal can do against some of these teams. So yes, the Swans not so good in that round 19 match, but some of those scores beforehand, just unreal. West Coast, Richmond, and now they've got Geelong squeezed in there. So it is awesome for him. So if we go to 2025, and I think everybody's pretty aware of it at the moment, but West Coast, Richmond, Geelong, even Geelong's midfield is not the strongest, so he should do pretty well against them. The Bulldogs should still be without Bont. Maybe Treloar will be back there, but if he's not, it's up against Libba and the kids in there. Pies do leak some points in the midfield. It'd be interesting to see if they try to get Perryman to run with him, but that's usually not how Collingwood roll. St Kilda was just leaking points to everybody the other day, Gold Coast and North Melbourne again. So it's just such a soft draw. And talking to a couple of people about the potential there, like, maybe season keeper, but he does have that last bye in round 16, and their draw does get a bit harder on the run home. And we do know Lockie Neal does actually drop off on run homes there. So he's one maybe to watch and say, well, I could potentially just have him for 15 weeks. Or if they're like, maybe he gets the Bedford tag, and we have a look at it here. But maybe he's not necessarily a season keeper, depending on what sort of how the form of these teams are. But for definitely a starter, I think he should be in everyone's team, because that Lions draw at the start of the season couldn't get any easier for a team that's just won the premiership. It's actually unreal how they've put that together. Questions need to be asked at the AFL sometimes with this sort of stuff. Okay, the next one, again, no surprise from anybody that's watched this show and watched me, Caleb Sarong, 24%. The big thing, again, for me is these home games. His average at home and his average in wins, significantly better than pretty well nearly any other Fremantle player. Brayshaw seemed to have some of his highest scores when he was in away games last year, where, we know Sarong, when he's playing at home, it's over 120 average. And then also when he's playing in wins, it's over 120 point average. And the big thing, so you'll see there, a lot of those home games were quite large scores off the charts. There was a couple of those games, like the Sydney game, for example, I've talked about, where Nate Fife was the main midfielder that day, had the most CBAs, and I think Sarong dropped to third. So you'll get opportunities there where I think most weeks Sarong will be the main guy, if not the number 2 guy to Brayshaw. So there might be a slight upside there for him, and that's another reason why I'm so bullish on him. But it's this fixture which is changing everything. So the big one, as we get later in the season here, North Melbourne, because they're selling that game, they now get the 3 games in a row. And the fact that they get that extra game, as I've said, it's going to help them. I think it's 13 games they now get at Optus Stadium throughout the season, when you've got teams who are only playing 11 games on their home deck, it is a massive advantage to Fremantle, and just especially that start of the year as well. Okay, Geelong away, which hasn't troubled Fremantle as much in the past, but yeah, it'll still be a tough game for them. But midfield wise, will be good. Sydney will be tough, but at least now it's no Goulden and no Mills. He might get some attention for Jordan, though. I think it could go to Brayshaw. And then, yeah, it really opens up West Coast. The Bulldogs undermanned, as we talked about. That Richmond game could be, I'm actually scared as a Richmond supporter what the end score could be for that. The D's, at least Clary and Petrarca back, that could be actually a ripping game of footy. I might even go to that one. And then back the Crows and the Saints. So, yeah, teams that if you're an owner, you want them to play. And I think they complement each other really well as vice captain. So that I don't see that changing. I've been tempted a little bit by going down to Brayshaw, but I keep thinking, no, I can try to find the cash if I need it from elsewhere because I'm just way too hot on Sarong. So I don't see those two players changing at all. This third player could change, and this is the big one. So I want to keep my buy structure together. I either had Bont or Butters in there, but we both know they're missing that first buy. So for me, I want a player who I can potentially pivot to either Butters or Bont when they come back and not change my buy structure. Like the only part to this, actually, I'll talk about the two players first, and then I'll talk about one massive alternative that I'm looking at. So the two players I really like is Libba and Rosie. And I was already leaning towards both. Rosie, unfortunately, went out and went like stupid against St Kilda, and then everybody's jumped on him. He's now at 23%, and I can see that continuing to rise. Normally for Rosie, I'm like, I'm not so hot on, and a few people were actually looking at him as a pod, but now that he is the number one guy in that Port Adelaide midfielder, he's the captain. He's got to kind of stand up in those games to get Port Adelaide off to a great start. So there's, I think there's some upside, especially at that 529 price. And as I said, hopefully Butters comes back and has a couple of slow games. And if Rosie can get to the similar price, it's just a straight swap to get, one of the best midfielders in the game. And yeah, it doesn't change that buy structure. So 2024. There were some good scores in there, but some of these scores were, injury affected as well. And that's why we've got the price that he is at. But now without Butters in the team, it does change everything. So there's some great early fixtures because they do have that gather round. They've got the Tigers at home in round 2. Again, it's just a disaster for us. Saints, Hawks, North Melbourne. And then the Bulldogs should have players back, and then we've got the show. They've got the showdown. I shouldn't say we either. They've got the showdown. Does get a bit tougher around this round 10, 11 section, and then they've got the bye. But by then, I'm expecting Butters to be back anyway, and he's the one that I'd potentially go. Or Bont will be back, and I can just potentially go to Bont anyway. So that's my thing. I'm thinking Rosie is a pivot play to start the year, get enough cash to change to one of those guys. Libba, same sort of boat. We know the best of Libba, what he can do. He did burn me last year with the injury, but it's all on his shoulders this year. So until at least Bont and Treloar come back. There is some word Treloar may come back a little bit earlier, so just got to be mindful of that, and that's why I've got Rosie ahead. We did obviously see Libba started off on fire against the Cats there with the 155, and then we didn't get those lots of DNPs, which was unfortunate, and it did finish quite strong, but 526 for a reason. But go back to just the year before 2023, and this is why some people were looking at him last year, because he's tendency to put up some massive VC type scores with a 141, 140, another 141, a 139, 149 there, and then that run home with that 133, 159 before that injury affected 20. So here is a guy who, as a short-term play, if it worked out for longer in the season, great. But I feel like for a period of time in 2025, now it might not be the best start in regards to a fixture point of view, but I don't see him getting any attention because any attention might be going to, say, a Richards or Sanders, the better ball movers compared to the in and under player. But yeah, North, Collingwood, Carlton, Freo, Brisbane, and then we start getting into the situation where Bont might be back. But again, so I think because Bont and Treloar will be back earlier, I like Rosie more than what I like Libba. Noah Anderson and Merritt can wait. I'll probably look at them at some point throughout the season. But the obvious one here, and I think he is probably the most high owned premium midfielder he is, 63% is Nick Dacos. A lot of the content creators aren't going Nick Dacos. Talking to a couple of former winners as well, they are avoiding him early. Seems like the general public more. You guys are on him. Like, yeah, that first half against Richmond was just taking the absolute mickey. Can't play Richmond every week, but we know how much of a superstar he is. So it is all dependent on how he goes against the GWS. And we saw this last year. So people who avoided him last year at the start, they did benefit because naturally it's an early buy. But that St Kilda game, he put the 54 in. So he was starting off at 650 last year, and he got himself down around that buy period at 560. So you saved was that $84,000 by the time you brought him in, and then you did want him for this period of time, especially when he was playing Anzac Day. It's just unreal. So we know what the guy can do, and this is where the debate is this year, but we get to actually look at the main game where we can make this decision, and it's not listed on there, but the round 0 game against GWS, if there's a team that's going to potentially lock him down, it's going to be them. So that is a worry as well. Carlton, George Hewitt, outside that 150 where he got the points really late, and Chris and I were talking about this the other day, his last sort of 15, 20 minutes, I think it was a non-owner in that game, he just went berserk. But he was looking like getting another sort of maybe 110, and against Carlton, he does have a bit of a history of hundreds and 110s, and if we roll up there was the 101. That game, until he went nuts in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes, was looking like being 100 to 110, and then 100 again. So George Hewitt does a really good job on Dacos. 100's not to be sneezed at, but when you're paying this much for a premium player who will drop if he's not obviously scoring the massive premium scores, it's something to think about. And then round 5 again, if they send a Jordan type to him. So I do want Dacos in, especially from Anzac Day, and then after that, if he was to go nuts in that round 0 opening match and go at least 110, 120, yes, I will find the cash to get Rosie up to him. But for now, I think Dacos is an avoid, and then I'll solve that situation later. From then we get into the more mid-price guys. There's a few of them. I've got the two obvious ones. Clayton Oliver. What more can you say about him? Kicked 3 goals, very un-Clayton Oliver-like, but did he look good? The fantasy pick is back. So, yeah, just get on. I think the highest most owned player is Caleb Daniel. So it probably gives us an indication that 73% of teams are proper teams at the moment locked in. And the fact that Clary's not far off that. If I don't see why you'd be trying to fade him. Some people are looking at maybe Petrarca type. I don't like that so much. I feel like, he has to get a bump to the ribs and you could be in some trouble there. So I would just personally let him go and look at other options. So, I'm a massive fan of Clary, and it's great to see him backfiring. The competition's better for if he is up and about. The next one, I saw a few people talking about this on some chats, and he's actually gone up a couple percent. I think he might have even been as low as 8% when people were talking about this. A lot of the community aren't picking Adam Chera. Now, there is a potential that Walsh comes back, but I don't really think that makes that much of a difference. Cripps, Walsh, Chera's going to get no attention then, and then they've got Hewitt. Will either play the 3rd or the 4th banana, but Chera doesn't necessarily need the CBAs to score. The big thing again, Carlton absolutely, KOTD for their fixture to start the year, and we'll talk a bit more about that in 2 seconds, as we said. But it's this 2023 season. Chera was a top 5 pick. You got to remember that Freo took him top 5. He's now played, that sort of over the 120 games. So, he could be an absolute breakout superstar of this competition. And if we kind of go through, 2024 wasn't the year for him. Sorry, 2023 was. It was kind of a little bit of a slow start. And then once he got into that period, 144, 134, 132, had another 108. And then there was another section here where 129, 132, 127, 130, and 111 got himself up to 629. So if he gets anywhere near some of those scores, he could propel himself up to a 600 guy very quickly. We don't need him to be a long-term option. We do have a lot of trades, and this is the thing now. A lot of people are playing a little bit more fantasy where these guys don't need to be season keepers. They just need to be a period of time. And you look at the period that he needs to play for and do well. Richmond, it could be anything. Bulldogs, undermanned, anything. Collingwood, again, the midfield, yeah, they can be scored against West Coast and North Melbourne, even Geelong at the G. So, and then it keeps going. Adelaide Oval, Adelaide, St Kilda at the MCG, and then it gets a bit more difficult. If he can continue to go and get through his bye, well, during the bye periods, it's West Coast and North Melbourne again. So, geez, the Blues have a really good run to start the season. It's probably going to annoy quite a few other opposition supporters, but the Blues could be up and about early, and I think Chera is going to get absolutely no attention there and just run right. So he's the obvious one for me. The great thing is we do have alternatives. If for whatever reason Chera or Oliver don't work out, we've got options to go down to. So Will Ashcroft comes more into vogue, 21% ownership. So if he goes off the charts now that he's got the early buy, easy pivot down to him. I don't really like the Harley Reid selection, 7%. The other one I do like, but is Finn Callaghan. Tom Green, we know, is out early in the season. He was already going to be the second guy in there. I think Cogs looks absolutely cooked. So Finn Callaghan, the guy that just turned down the $17 million deal to commit to the GWS, they're going to want him in there. Great player, looked awesome the other day. And, the fact that he's going to have to be the main guy, he does dispose the ball better than Tom Green does as well. Tom Green's obviously the magnet like Clary and just gets his 30-odd touches and, he can get himself to 110 through that. But Finn Callaghan will kick the ball much more. So I really do like him as a starting selection if he didn't have that round 2 bye. But as a guy that if Cher and Oliver didn't work out, yeah, you could definitely pivot down to him, especially why he is the M1 in that GWS team. All right, some of these premium rookies now come in for me. I'm off the Peatling pick. There's just too many cooks in the kitchen there at Adelaide, and I don't think he's getting the CBA's amount that we really need for him to achieve the big push. Ollie Hollins was somebody I did look at too, that halfback of Carlton, just because of that fixture again, and I kind of want as many Blues players as possible. So there is quite a few premium midfielders in here. What I mean, premium midfielders, premium rookie midfielders. And we'll actually scroll by this amount. So we'll call it from 206 because we know Layla is 203 or Lawler. I think that's the correct pronunciation. So no doubt there's some interesting percentages here. The one I like is Nathan O'Driscoll. We know he's locked into that wing role. The wing, it can be hit and miss depending on what wing they are running through. They do have Sharp on the other one, and we did see it. It was a slow start from Nod the other day. Then he got into the game. So it is a worry. I think, there might be games where he could be capped. It could be poor games. Might be a bit of a slow burn. But again, Freo do have some of those good games like we've mentioned with Sarong. So I think he's a fairly safe pick for a guy that we know is going to be in their best 18. So I do like him. We've got Nexus Sardis, 31 touches the other day against the Cats. That was just ridiculous. He could even potentially keep Parrish out of the side, or if best, Parrish might just be coming off from that bench because, the high draft pick, they want to put games into him, 31 touches for the 90. Wouldn't be surprised if Sardis is owned by most of the competition come the start of the year. It'll be interesting to see what kind of happens again with that buy situation. But if they don't play, he becomes a loophole possibility for round 4 as well. There's just too much to like from there for a guy that averaged 39 last year. He should smash that out of the park. So I think he's really ready to take that next step up. And then I've got, who do I have? There's actually Sheldrick. So Sheldrick, he wasn't as much on my radar because I didn't think he had the opportunity presented to him. 29% of teams have now jumped on, and that's because no Goulden, no Mills, especially Goulden for at least they're talking maybe 3 months. So yeah, he'll fit in there, even if he's coming off a bench. But it was the 100 Supercoach points the other day in the practice match against the Gold Coast Suns. Had the 22 touches, but the big thing was the 7 tackles as well. So he likes to get his hands dirty around the ball. Dean Cox is going to absolutely love him as a player in there. So been in the system for a little while now. We've just been waiting for the breakout. So no surprise, Sheldrick is in my team. Yeah, and then trying to work out who's that midfielder missing. Yeah, of course, I forgot to click on Connor Rosie. So there's my starting lineup with Neil, Sarong, Rosie, Oliver, Chera, Nod, Sardis, and Sheldrick. Okay, now going to the bench. I know there's an obvious guy, and I'll talk about him in a moment because I can already see some of the comments. Feel like some of the comments will be coming through. There's a particular guy on that screen I have not chosen, but we'll talk about that and why in a moment again. So Mitch Nevitt is been on my bench. He's been locked in ever since Supercoach Mama came on the show and said this kid is doing everything right from a preseason perspective. He's on all the posters. He looked really good, sold again against the Bombers. I just think he's going to get plenty of opportunities again. Now he doesn't have that early bye. What more can you say for a young fellow who's got 22 touches? And I feel like he could be fourth or fifth banana for that Geelong midfield. It's just somebody for the future. The next one is quite an interesting one. This guy only scored the 50 the other day. Quite a bit of competition at Fremantle, and the knock on him in his for his draft year was his speed, and that's why he did fall down to the Fremantle Dockers. Reminds me a bit like Ben Hobbs there. The difference is he's got exceptional foot skills. So really do like Murphy Reid as a player. How much opportunity he gets, that will be a good question going forward. But for now, he's in. The good thing about it, he is 131K. So there are guys who are cheaper that I can potentially go down to. And then Lucas Camperoli could have not done any more to impress for the Blues. We've talked about their fixture, so there was opportunity to give the young fella a go, especially with Jagger Smith out. So they would have been expecting Jagger to be part of that midfield rotation. He goes out. There's a spot there, 20 touches. He did butcher the ball a little bit, 88 DT to the 65 Supercoach, but his link up was really impressive. So he's a guy that's, he sees a chance to get straight into that side. I think they'll look at it and go, well, we do have some teams there that will be playing kids, especially Richmond. So, probably gets that round one go, and then it's all on his shoulders if he wants to keep his spot. Could become a bit of a dead rookie, so we've got to be a little bit mindful of that. But I think he did enough to impress to definitely be looked at in the side, and I think he could do well enough against Richmond to at least get him a second game, and then maybe they give him a third game, and we at least get one price rise, and then by then they hit that West Coast North Melbourne situation. So we kind of hold our breath a little bit there, but no different to any other rookie that we've got available. A couple of the higher percentage guys. I'll leave the Levi Ashcroft chat for now. I know a lot of people probably pulling their hair out. Why haven't I mentioned Levi? I seem to avoid him every time. Sid Draper, again, too many cooks in the kitchen. I think the kid has got all the talent in the world, and if an Adelaide injury goes down, I'm all on the kid. But the fact that Matt Crouch is still part of that team, I know a lot of Adelaide supporters are like, why is he even there? But he played well again the other day. Dawson, Soligo, so they're going to be the guys who are starting. We've got Peatling as well. Then it's Rankin. They're going to rotate a lot of these guys through. So how much CBAs does Sid Draper get? Sort of where does he fit in if he's not getting any midfield time? For 190,000, I'd rather spend the extra 8,000 to go Driscoll, who I know sort of locked in there. Fino Sutherland was quite impressive too. One that it was a real performance that did make me sit there and take notice. We know the kid's got a lot of talent. He's playing on that wing, locked on that wing. I feel like if I've got the choice between a Driscoll and a Sutherland, I'll go the guy with the better fixture, who is the more mature age, who is locked in. But Finn definitely got no issue with people going it. And I think that's, if you're on Draper and you're not on a Finn or Sutherland, I'd be finding the extra $9,000 and going to a Sutherland there. I think that's a quite solid pick. Langford could have not probably done any worse to get kicked out of our team. And that was also a lack of opportunity. We've got, from Melbourne, we've got Petrarca, Viney, Oliver, all fit and ready to go in there. Even sort of Rivers' time was down, so no surprise there. Boxshell and the other St Kilda player in Hasty both interest me. Hasty was running more off that half back. I think he's the one that probably gets more of an opportunity early on the Boxshell. But Boxshell would be the great one because he is that slightly bit cheaper. You keep the 2 goals. Did look quite settled, but the problem is St Kilda will have some players coming back in, so I feel like he gets squeezed out. But just one to kind of monitor, but I don't think he's going to get the opportunity that we need him to get. Ruck line. We'll just put Harry Boyd in straight away. We know he's going to the bench. It's a no-brainer. I think Reedy's played himself out of sides down to 7%. So, he looked really disappointing, Reedy. Harry Boyd, with the fact that, we know King's injury, even if he's not scoring, it doesn't even matter if Boyd only is scoring like 30 or 40. He's 99K. And but he's going to play. Put him in R3. That's just a no-brainer. I'd like him more than, say, a Thomas Sims or any of these other options. So just put him in there. It's more about the more expensive guys for us here. And what do we want to roll as a premium option? I'm slightly off Cherry at the moment. There's nothing that Cherry's done wrong. I think he'll still average 115. I'll just kind of monitor that situation because there's a couple of guys who now, because of their situation, are way more appealing to me. The obvious one is Tom De Koning. Again, that fixture is awesome. Pitchnet has now gone down with that injury. He is the main guy in that ruck. A sole ruck Tom De Koning could really hurt you. I've got no problem with people wanting to try to fit De Koning in and put him at the flex. So you have the 3 premium rucks. I've looked at that as well with a couple options, but I think De Koning really should be the most owned ruck. Or second to Boyd. So I'm kind of surprised that still people are going sort of Cherry when you can save that money. The hard thing also picking De Koning and Cherry is they've got the same buy. So it is a worry. And also a worry of what happens when Pitternet finally gets fit and what you do there. But that's a bridge I would rather cross when it gets to it. Matt Flynn has come into a little bit more vogue. Quite a lot of people message me. I think if you're going to do Flynn, again, it needs to be a flex position. I don't mind it still if it looks like he's going to be the number one, but you just couldn't have him as an R2. It'd give you some sleepless nights. The two that I'm debating about here, and it just comes down to money. I've been on Nank the entire time. I'm still on Nank, but I've got to talk about Max Gawn. He has been doing some great fitness over the preseason. He's past that larynx injury, and we know that doesn't affect his running capacity, and he looks super fit. Slow start last year against the Swannies, but some of these scores, Max Gawn, just ridiculous. The worry is how more of the season can he sort of last? Is he going to need rests? But against teams, especially weaker teams, like you don't want to be playing Max Gawn as an opponent because, geez, he can put some monster scores in, and there's no reason why he might still have a little bit more in the tank to do it this year. And it's the start of the year, which is the real interesting part from him from a ruck point of view. So Briggsy in round 1 could absolutely monster him. Obviously, we didn't get to see Briggsy the other day because he had flu. Cherry's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. And then Witts, who's still a decent ruck, but is aging. But the big ones, Geelong, what is their game plan to stop Max? Because he will absolutely destroy De Koning, and they're not going to put it. So then you've got a Stanley coming in who's semi-retired, or it's going to be a Blutsarves or a combination. Then he gets Draper, and maybe an underdone Darcy if Darcy's back. Round 8, he'll get Matty Flynn. And then, we start getting into some more solid rucks. But this section of games here, there could be potential, and even the Tigers, I think he could kind of destroy us. So there's enough games there that says Max Gawn could just absolutely smoke it. But you are paying premium price for him. And there is always that worry that now maybe with just that age, what happens? I don't think they play Tom Campbell forward with their injuries up there, but that is always a chance. I really do like Lloyd Meek's fixture as well, of someone I've looked at as in the flex position too. If he didn't have that round 4 bye, I'd probably be more hotter on him. Does he have enough upside that he could sort of match? I feel like he'd be a guy that might not be a season keeper, but it's just that start again. And sort of how many of these guys can you have who aren't going to potentially be season-long keepers? But playing Draper, De Koning, Briggs, Sweet, it probably will be SDK, and then into West Coast and probably Flynn. You couldn't get a better ruck fixture from somebody, so he could put up some monster scores, make some really good cash, and be maybe a pivot guy, or even could be close enough that sort of be, potentially stays in your team for a bit longer. The worry is, probably haven't seen the massive scores outside of that 145 from him. Compared to what some of these other rucks can do. So I would rather just pay slightly up more for a guy that doesn't have the buy. Everybody knows I've been big on Toby Nankervis. Nothing changed the other day. So what was happening was, as expected, Toby Nankervis he wins the hit out, he tries to hit out straight down to his foot. And then he tries to lay a tackle, because we cannot have that ball getting on the outside, because Richmond are going to get absolutely smashed otherwise. If we lose the hit out, which was happening, or even we're winning it, but the opposition wins the ball, which was happening a lot. And that was because of Daycock's dominance the other day. Nank would run into half back and try to take an intercept mark. So I feel like there's opportunities for him to take 3 or 4 of them a game. The finish of the year was ridiculous. Outside of sort of that Port Adelaide 58, a couple, maybe a little lower scores, and those last couple, but Marsh, Meek, Witts, kind of no surprise there, but dominated Cherry, has the the ceiling. Very similar, not as high as Gawn, but yeah, he's kind of not far off that range. And if he's taking more intercept marks, yeah, you could see it, him hitting those 150s. And that's what I'm sort of banking on Nank to do, because he's going to have to just be that leader for Richmond in all situations. So the draw, like in a perfect world, I'd rather him not coming up against, say, a Gawn in round 7. Round 5 will be interesting, because will Darcy be back for that game? All the reports is Darcy's going to try to get him up for the Gawn game. So if he gets back early, it's a bit disappointing. But if he isn't, that's good for us. Is Marshall and Boyd still operating and splitting that ruck in round 3? Jordan Sweet to Conning, he should have his way against them in regards to hitouts. I think he's a great start, and definitely the great part about Nank as well, if you're looking for a keeper, is the round 14 bye. There's an outside of sort of really day costs, maybe Anderson and a couple of the Swans. There's not too many players for that round 14 bye, so he's a real point of difference there. So I like the idea of going Nank as a pod against Cherry. So that'll be the big one. That'll be the hit or miss for me. If he can at least stay with Cherry, that's great for me, because I'm saving 50K from doing that move. That's the big watch for my team. Forward line, the easiest one is Jason Horne-Francis. What more can you say? There's we know Butters is missing. The guy's a freak. I think he's becoming more and more teams. Some people are talking about fading him 61%. That could even climb. So no surprise there. Actually, the first 3 are pretty easy. Jack McRae absolutely dominated for the Saints the other day. He might have even been 40, maybe 50 Supercoach points better than any other Saint Kilda player out there. He just felt that he was so dominant. It was 34 to Boxshell, but geez, it felt like he was in his own little world, because there was nobody else from St Kilda giving really anything outside of the rookie. So, I think he's going to fit in really well. And then Caleb Daniel doing Caleb Daniel things. I can see he's been going really high in drafts as a potential F1 this year. 113 Supercoach, had the 26 touches. The little helmet man is going to be an absolute lock at 269. He's actually just a no. It really means nothing for Supercoach, because any realistic team will have Caleb Daniel, and so we're all going to have him. So if he scores 20, if he scores 100, we're all getting that score, because we're all going to have him on field. So that's how I sit there. The other guys, now the rest of these for me are all rookie price players. So I don't have Bailey Smith at the moment. I know he's a highly owned player. I did say from the start I wanted to watch him in round 0. I don't get to do that. So he is one that I'd rather pivot to. I want to see how he's coming back from the ACL. I have concerns. This seems to be a common thread again with the content creators and former winners, that they are avoiding Bailey Smith, just because we don't know how somebody like him is going to come back. We know his running capacity, and if his legs and knees are going to take some time to get into it. I feel like I will own him at some point. It's just a question of I want to see how he's going before I make that decision. If I do make a couple adjustments, I could always get him in. But I feel like that is going to be the avoid for me. I don't think I can go there without sort of seeing him in some action, especially that he's had that interrupted preseason as well. And a couple of the other high expensive the highly owned premium players, and Rankin's the other one. Sanders is also in that mix too. So Rankin, again, the Adelaide players, I feel like there's so many cooks in the kitchen. He is one that could burn me, because we know if why he's fit, he can put up big scores and stuff. But if I'm making the decision between wanting the extra defender, because we've got that less defender rookies, or the extra forward, I feel like there's enough forward rookies to cover, and I'd rather the premium defender. So if that means Jordan Clark, if it's Perryman, if it's any of them, I feel like they'll score similar to Rankin anyway, probably have better injury history as well. So I'd rather back one of them in and just go the rookies that are playing. Rookies should dictate your team as it is anyway. Riley Sanders, the worry is now Treloar might come back a little bit earlier. Wasn't so impressed with what I saw the other day too, so I think you can definitely fade him. All right, so Kako, and I'll actually get Berry at the same time here, because they're very similar in the way that they're going to score, because they are small forwards. Not a huge fan of the Powell Pepper one. Again, it's a more expensive small forward role. But I can see why some people are wanting to go Powell Pepper. But yeah, Berry and Kakao, I can see me having one on the bench and one on field and trying to loophole between both of them. There'll be games like, say, round 2. I expect probably Berry to get off the chain because he's playing Richmond. So their stat line was very similar. And except for obviously their super coach and their goals. And that's why it was similar. So Kakao, 9 kicks, 5 handballs. He had the 4 tackles. So the 2 tackles, the 4 marks, and end up scoring 97, but he did kick the 4 straight. Berry, on the other hand, he had 7 kicks and 7 handballs for the 14 touches again. He only had the 1 mark this time, and then the 2 tackles again for 48 points, but he had no goals. So the difference between those two was just the goals that Kako kicked. They had very similar stat lines, and this is what we can get from the small forwards. They're going to have 10 to 16 possessions. They're probably, if they're not kicking goals, are going 40. There'll be days where they will kick goals and they'll boost it up to 60, 70, 80, potentially 100. So it just depends on any given week. So if you've got the ability to have one on field and one on the bench with the emergency on, and you can loophole between the two of them, especially in rounds 2, 3, and 4, while we've got these bye rounds on, a bit harder in round 4 because obviously Kako's missing that round as it looks like at the moment. But at least especially round 2 and 3, you can have the better scoring player on field. So I like both of them. I think they're both really class players. They're going to add a lot to those forward lines. Would love to have them in my team, and going to be exciting to watch. And I think both of them are worth a shout. It's just depending on can you kind of use it as a loophole situation? Again, with Kako, the great thing too, if you have that forward mid link, you can maybe loophole him in the midfield as well. So he does open up some options there. Connor Stone playing a halfback wing role. We've been waiting for him to really, get his opportunity at GWS. They do have the chance to play him because the amount of suspensions they do to players in that sort of same age bracket, 62, 15 touches. I think that's fine enough for him to go for a period of time. If it's 5, 6, 7 weeks, especially the fact that Green's injured as well, so they've got to make an adjustment there. They've got so many things going wrong at the moment for the Giants from an injury perspective. So Stone, I can see getting enough opportunity to make some cash. And again, it's a round 2 loophole player who is going to come handy for us. I did talk about Ben Patton earlier, so no surprise that he is in my team. That guy who can be a loophole option for me in the forward line, but the fact is I can move him back if need be. So if it's Bice that's picked instead, then I can obviously make an alternative move, and there's a couple options I've got up my sleeve for him. But I've liked him all preseason. He's crossed over from the Saints. He's mature age, so what's not to like? Now this guy, how is this guy not the most owned player? Sam Davidson. Mature age coming in. The Bulldogs have a ton of injuries. They've been absolutely hit awfully. And what more could have he done against the Dogs to not have you in his side? He ended up, it was 81 Supercoach. So maybe people are looking at that. But he actually scored 102 Dream Team, 29 touches and a goal. So if he fixed up some of his disposal, that could have been a 120-point game. I'm so glad it isn't, because I'm hoping people avoid him. Like that's awesome if he doesn't end up in every team, because they're gonna have to trade him in at some point. So maybe they're like, oh well, that's the downgrade option. There's always a player that we probably use a trade on, but you don't want to be using a trade on somebody like Davison because you're just going to want him. He's been in the system long enough. He's come over from Richmond VFL. He will be awesome for the Doggies and awesome for our side. So that is just an absolute no-brainer. In regards to a couple other rookie options, because I did say there might be options there for me to pivot to. Elijah Hewitt, I think, has fallen down the ranks a little bit. Neil Erasmus. Tom Lynch, if I can probably alter a couple of things to get the money if he is there fit and firing, but I'm not loving the guy who's coming off an injury pre-season. Matt Whitlock is one that I still think he's a chance, but sort of worried that he wasn't part of that team the other day. So that's probably disappointing. Actually, a few of these guys, it's actually quite disappointing. And you look at their ownership and you're like, why aren't they getting probably more opportunity, especially the fact that they a lot of these are in the sides of people. The one that could be a good one, I've talked about him before, Ty Gallup. didn't look great the other day, but the conditions probably didn't suit him. So one that I think we've got to keep a bit of an eye on. I think he's the one that the Lions might go with. They do have Sam Day there too, but they did give Gallup an opportunity the other day. Didn't really touch the ball much, but the fact that if he's the one named as their full forward, we know they're going to obviously they'll be kicking to win. The Lions with that fixture are going to get lots of opportunity to score. The last one I need to talk about is Hugo Garcia, who's at 245. He has spent quite a bit of time in my team. I did do a bit of a rearrangement and used his cash elsewhere to get the team that I like, but I don't think it's an awful pick. My probably biggest problem is the break even of 46 was, so we probably need to really have him hitting that 80 mark. Now he could potentially do that. The question becomes how does he get enough of that line share when if Sinclair comes back, which it looks like he will, and he's never actually scored sort of those scores before. So there is some concern there, especially if he gets bumped out as that fourth midfielder. So I would have rather see it with a full complement in there with St Kilda. I feel like there's enough rookies there that we don't have to go there to start off with. The draw's a bit up and down too, so it might be tough for him to score. And we saw that the other day against Port Adelaide. He did have plenty of opportunity in there. He did score the 71, which was a great score. A lot of that came from the second half. The first half, he couldn't really get near it, but a bit of junk time. The fact that he could score in junk time is a good thing, but at the same time, that does, limit your super coach potential. If he sort of goes 70s, it's not a bad option in the end, but in saying that, is there enough of these rookies who can sort of, for 100K cheaper, go at least 60 or if not more? And I feel like there is. So I think I'm going to avoid for now. But he's still back of the mind if I end up freeing up enough cash, but I just don't think I'm going to go there with, some of the thoughts of my team. And the lucky last one, and yes, he is in my team, finally, Levi Ashcroft. He looked like his brother out there playing. Looks like he can play any role. Kicked a goal, 23 touches, 80 super coach. Especially now without the bye. That my biggest concern with Ashcroft was the fact that there was no, they were going to have an early bye, and how many players can I sort of rotate? And there were so many other midfielders. So I feel like if the bye didn't get moved, and they were still playing round zero, unless he came out and smashed like a massive score, I was sort of leaning towards maybe a cheaper option. So the big thing with my team this time is I've got 53,000. So this is something I don't normally do and keep cash in the bank. I'm usually somebody who likes to spend as much of my cash as possible. The other day I actually made a team and had zero cash left, and I was nearly going to share that, but I thought, that's probably a bit unrealistic. It does give me some flexibility if I do want to make some adjustments now to actually have the money to do it without making massive changes with my team. There's nothing worse than there's a guy that might pop off, say, in one of these games, hypothetically, like Corey Warner, and then I don't have the cash to get out, like change a pattern to Warner, for example. So that's why I've kept enough cash there so I can make those alterations. We'll fix up this team. We'll use the optimize button, get all the players on that need to be on in the positions. It'll be interesting to see who they've gone with. Bo Allen, again, as I said, that might be one that come off, but we'll go Allen off there. Levi Ashcroft, interesting that they moved him out of the sub. Who did they go there? They went Nivet. Yeah, no, thanks. Nivet can go back to this there. The one frustrating thing is, if you take off your emergency, there's any NRL player will know this. NRL Supercoach player will know this. It comes up until you've actually added your emergency. So I prefer that just goes away if they could kind of change that. And as I've said in other podcasts, this does open up loophole options as well. So round 2, let's focus on that. If you're looking at defense, we've got no GWS. So we can go through the buys here. No GWS. Leak. So he's there on field at the moment. I could potentially put a Zach Reed, who's playing against Adelaide early Saturday, as my emergency. If he scores well, great. I keep James Leake on the field. If he scores poorly, I can bring whoever my D8 is. So for now, it's Bo Allen. And in this case, Bo Allen is playing on the Sunday. And then the same thing happens with the forwards. So we've got the situation here. Connor Stone in my forward line for round 2. Kako plays on the Saturday, so I can have him there as the emergency. Straight after him is Berry, so if Kako scores poorly, great, off you come Connor Stone. and Barry, you come on there. So on top of having the flex who can cover a poor score, I'm actually loopholing here with my using my bench effectively, which will then take the best score. And then we've got the same situation we can do here in round 4. So if we kind of look at here, Kako now, as long as Essendon still have the bye there, which they should. So Kako is the guy that we can put on field, and we can put a different emergency on. So a good example of this would be, say, maybe a Ben Patton, for example, who is playing on the Saturday night. So he comes on. He becomes now the emergency again. And we will put... if he scores well, awesome, Kako comes on field. If he doesn't score well, then Stone stays on field. So, there's ways of playing around with this. Same again, you can maybe have that loophole guy and use Kako for the same situation. Or if you've got Sardis, you can do the same thing there with Camperoli, for example. He is playing on the Thursday night. So if he's around, and then I could use, say, Nevitt on the Friday night, for example, I could do Nevitt into one of these players like a Sheldrick. This is another reason why I don't like Bo Allen so much, because GWS and West Coast do play each other in round 4. So it does take that little rookie loophole situation away from me. So I am mindful of that too. So there's some different ways to play, and that's where I'm having a look at, just try to exploit these rookies, try to maximize my best scores. So I've got the premium guys in those best 18 weeks, so I can loophole and have vice captain and captain scores as well. It'll be really interesting to see what happens now. Round 0, I've got the Sydney, Collingwood, and GWS players playing in there. I've got no Hawks players, so that's a bit of a muchness for me. So tell me what you think, guys. What are you guys thinking? Got any dilemmas where you're deciding between 50-50 players? I hope this has helped, and we will be back soon. Hopefully, Chris and Ben will be with us soon. We're all going well up north, and we'll be leading in with our final teams as the season kicks off in less than a week. Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon. Bye.